Real life science.
Real life science. We got a ton this week, so we're going to go through it rapid fire. Right off the bat, we're going to start off with NASA, OSIRIS-REx departure, farewell to asteroid BENNU. There was a 49-minute live stream on Monday, May 10th. OSIRIS-REx left BENNU to begin its 2-year trip back to Earth with the return of its historic samples. Check that out. Watch the whole stream. It is good stuff. Put it on the second screen while you're killing bugs. It is great shit. OSIRIS-REx spent 2 years studying asteroid BENNU. Landed multiple times, collected soil samples, the whole 9 yards. It was an amazing mission, and now it's on its way back to us. Also, Simply Space. NASA find liquid water on Mars! ! This is a video that goes through a whole series of things where they were like, we found it here, we found it there, we found there's this Linnae that, you know, this is, you know, stuff, and that Dr. K specifically talked about it, that it's a thing that's in Odyssey now, but NASA has marked these Linnae on Mars and said this is sort of proof of sort of evaporating salt waters and sulfates and whatever that are sort of melting, becoming liquid, whatever, coming out of the rocks, running down, making these little ravines, and it's a process that happens over and over. Then they talk about these underground lakes that they found, that they've taken images of, where they say, hey, we think that this right here, that's an underground lake. They've talked about ice on the poles, whole 9 yards. It's interesting stuff, and it leads to a lot of interesting places. So check it out. 2-Bit Da Vinci put, the new moon race won't be like the first. Here's why. 12-minute long video. Definitely needs to be watched. Good stuff. Talks about, you know, the first moon race with the United States and the Soviets was a PR, Cold War, whatever. This is different. We're not going to be tourists. We're going to stay. We're going there to mine and make fuel. We're going there to establish a presence off planet. We're going there to start the process of mankind exploring out into the solar system and becoming a multi-planetary body species. Joe Scott, Answers with Joe channel, put out the Aldrin cylinder, a conveyor belt to Mars, 16-minute long. A lot of people don't know this. Buzz Aldrin was not only an astronaut and the second man to set foot on the moon, but also an accomplished engineer whose doctorate thesis was on the intricacies of orbital mechanics and orbital rendezvous. In 1985, Buzz presented to JPL the Aldrin cycler. This was reviewed and approved as feasible. It uses gravity assist to create a large ISS-type station that would be known as Castle that would continually cycle back and forth from Earth to Mars, orbiting, picking up people and equipment from Earth and depositing them on Mars orbit for planetary insertion. This would all be accomplished with next to no fuel used. Castle would cycle between the Earth and Mars approximately every 5 months using gravity assist. Part of the impetus for this project would be to make it politician-proof. After the initial cost of the build, it's quite cheap to maintain, so it would be as safe as, you know, administrations change. The thought is that you would put up multiple cyclers that would have you would have cyclers sort of arriving at each location on regular intervals every month or two. The ship that was used in that movie that we talked about, I think 2 weeks ago, Stowaway, that was a cycler. That was an Aldrin cycler. So the idea is you send up a smaller ship called the Taxi that docks with Castle, and on that smaller ship, you have people and materials that docks with the larger ship, and the larger ship just uses orbital mechanics and gravity assist to more or less for free keep flying back and forth. It costs very little to maintain. You're not using fuel. You're using orbital mechanics to just kind of stay in this loop for fairly indefinitely. Very, very cool stuff and worth checking out, and could be part of the key on how we sort of get to Mars. Like, you can Elon Musk has said flat out, you know, he's planning to be able to, with Starship, sort of get to Mars in only 80 to 90 days. But that, A, costs a massive amount of fuel, and B, is only available as an option like every almost 2 years when they're at the closest point in the cycle. Whereas the Aldrin cycler method would just sort of be constantly going back and forth. And like I said, you're really not using any fuel other than the fuel that you need for the taxis to get up to rendezvous with Castle, the back and forth. It is very, very cool stuff and very eye-opening. I think you should check it out. Isaac Arthur put out a video called Alien Languages, 35 minutes long. He talks about what if, we actually said he uncovered a signal. How would we know, how do you start the process of figuring out an alien language? How do you just start from scratch? There's a lot of things where we can do now where we can break codes and we can sort of linguistics experts you come across a language, where really, really smart guys on the planet now can take Japanese or Chinese or Russian, and even if they don't speak that, these guys are brilliant and they can sort of figure out through context and through, sort of Rosetta Stone methods and all these other things, they can figure out sort of what it is you're talking about. But that is sort of built on a lot of assumptions that we have as a shared species, where even people from France and Japan and Italy and Iceland, as different as they are and as different as their languages are, there are sort of shared kind of biases and shared assumptions because we're all one species living on one planet that are one type of life form. Those assumptions don't necessarily work if you're talking about the difference between a carbon-based life form and a different, silicon-based life form, or, like in the movie, what was that, the movie The Arrival or The Message or whatever, the one where it's like they're octopods or whatever, like septopods, they may think forward and backward, they may have different ways of expressing whatever. So very, very cool video by futurist Isaac Arthur where he talks about that in detail. We've got a trio of videos by Anton Petrov. First, paper claims discovery of mushrooms on Mars, but what are they? Spoiler alert, probably not mushrooms. I'm sure everybody's seen the pictures and seen some very salacious headlines in the last week or so where it's like, look, this looks like a mushroom. Yeah, okay, I get it. It does look like that. But he shows other pictures and it's like, here's how rocks can form in that way. Here, it could be this, it could be that, it could be all of the different possibilities. And it could be mushrooms. It literally could be some form of a life form that we've seen. But that's not, science doesn't work. Hey, look, that looks like a thing. It must be that thing. We've proved it. No, that's not how science works. Science works, you rule out all of the other explanations, and there are several other steps of things to rule out before you can jump to, hey, it's mushrooms. Could be mushrooms. We'll know in time. But it also could be very many other things. Check out that 15-minute long video where he explains what it could be, and then you'll know. Also, Anton Petrov, new observations of Venus discover interesting properties, 12 minutes long. So Venus, as opposed to Earth that has, a day that lasts a day long, 24 hours Earth time, Venus has a very different orbital mechanics, and a one Venusian day is actually 243 Earth days long, basically 2/3 of a year. The thick atmosphere actually can vary the time of the Venusian day by as much as 20 minutes per day. Also, the part of this was picked up like observations by Parker Solar Probe. The Parker Solar Probe made observations of Venus atmosphere and ionosphere. The probe heard the same thing that Galileo, the previous satellite probe, had heard passing by Jupiter, electrically charged gases. This allowed them to compare readings with the 1992 Venus Pioneer orbiter to make surprising discovery that the Venusian ionosphere seems to change quite dramatically based on probably the biggest sort of theory right now is based on solar activity. Super interesting. Check it out. And the last of the Anton Petrov videos for tonight is what China is building in space and why more rockets will crash, 13 minutes long. So it's projected to be, basically China is building a competitor to the ISS. They're building their own International Space Station. It's projected to be similar to the decommissioned Mir, around 1/5 the mass of the ISS. NASA has barred China from access to the ISS, so they're building their own. They've had two much smaller space stations, Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2, that were up for 3 years and 7 years respectively. But this is a much larger station, Tiangong 3, and it will have a much more extended mission, estimated to be 10 to 15 year long mission. It's going to have an orbiting telescope that can dock with the station that is estimated to be approximately 300 times more powerful than the Hubble telescope. There will be approximately 10 more automated launches of construction to construct the station. So basically, unlike the way we did the ISS, where we sent up people and stuff and had the people build the stuff, China is going on a fully automated system where they just send up all of the pieces that sort of auto dock and like lock together like Legos to build the station. And then they're going to send up the dozen or so astronauts, Chinese astronauts that are going to live on the station for, rotating out over the years to sort of, work and do the science up there. So there's 10 more rockets they're going to launch. We don't know the mechanics and details for all of them, but we know that the next 2 are already confirmed to be launched under the same plan as the current mission, which have unknown debris sites, which is sort of an article that went with that. Note, the approximately 9 tons of Long March 5B, which is the rocket that the Chinese used to send up this last one, it landed in the Indian Ocean west of the Maldives. It was predicted to land in the Atlantic. The Chinese drew great criticism as the rocket traveled over many populated areas. Their last rocket actually rained debris over the continent of Africa. There's a link to the Reuters article about that. This is sort of been drawn a lot of criticism as being fairly reckless. Super exciting that the Chinese are doing this. Super bummer that, they had to do this because couldn't work with them. And now the Russians are pulling out of working with us in the ISS in the future. And it's going to be, they're going to be working with Chinese. Super, uncool that they're just kind of like, we'll see where these rockets land. Maybe the Atlantic, maybe the Pacific, who knows? But interesting nonetheless. Roy, you had something on Venus?
Just a quick point. When I watched that video, he has a recording of what the probe actually listened to the ionosphere. And immediately my mind went to the FSS scanner in game, because that's exactly what it sounds like. And it just, I think I heard you or someone else in the past talking about how when they developed the FSS scanners, like they'd done some looking into what noises actually come off of the planets and the ionospheres and stuff. And so it just triggered a memory that, like, this is just another example of the level of science realism in the game.
Absolutely. That takes us to the Scott Manley video. Viewer questions, episode 5, 21 minutes long. Look, Scott Manley, I've got a huge man crush on. He's amazing. He's awesome. His videos are great, fantastic, super science nerd who just breaks it down. No filler, all killer. You got to watch this for yourself. But I'll give you 2 spoilers, and this will force you to click the link, because if you're anything like me, you'll be like, well, I got to see this now. Did you know that if you live in the US, you can actually buy yellow cake uranium from Amazon? No shit. There's an Amazon link in his video. That hurts my brain. That should not be a thing. But and a railgun on the moon. That's all I'm going to say. Railgun on the moon. Holy shit. Check out this video. Roy, you've got your piece in real life science. Go.
So from Stanford University and Howard Hughes Medical Institute, they reported this week that they have an experimental device that turns thoughts into text. And they've actually tested this on a man who was paralyzed. It has allowed him to basically type by thinking, and it shows up on a computer screen. He's got 95% accuracy in the typing, and it's 90 characters per minute. So it's like for real, scary real. It's basically a sensor they've implanted on the surface of his brain. And what they had him do was imagine cursive handwriting each letter over the same spot. So it's a sort of a nuance, but it made the difference. Instead of imagining writing left to right across a page, they had him imagine writing in the same spot over and over, which for any of you that were around at the dawn of the PDA, the Palm Pilot had a language called graffiti, which was based on jot, which was basically the same thing. You'd write your letters over and over on the same piece of the touchpad. Anyway, super cool stuff there. And obviously, I think a harbinger of things to come, perhaps with Neuralink and other technologies in the future.